Welcome to the Microchip Is podcast. Join your host, Mike Maynard, as he learns about the technologies, products, and people that make microchip technology what it is today.
Welcome to Microchip Is, the podcast that talks about all the different aspects of microchip technology. Today, we'll be talking about FPGAs, and I'm joined by Diane Tosetti. Diane is the Senior Manager of Business Development at Microchip. Welcome to the podcast, Diane.
Thank you, Mike. Nice for you to have me on.
Of course, it's great to have you on. So, you're Senior Manager of Business Development. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at Microchip and what you do to grow the FPGA business?
Yes, I am the Senior Manager of Business Development and Outbound Marketing for the business unit, specifically focused on the terrestrial market segments. So I have a counterpart that is responsible for our heritage business, which is all of our space, aerospace, and aviation. So everything else kind of falls up and rolls up under me, from industrial to automotive, medical, you name it.
Wow. So, FPGAs, I think, can be used everywhere, as you say. But when I look at the website, one of the things you're talking about is the intelligent edge. Can you explain what you mean by the intelligent edge and why it's so important to your customers?
Sure. We didn't make up the term intelligent edge. In fact, if you listen to some of the analysts or read about what the analysts are reporting on, everyone is moving compute to the edge. It's a full switch from, everything being done in the data center to moving out to the edge. The edge devices and nodes, they need to be very flexible, and they need to support diverse architectures. Edge devices, when you think about adding artificial intelligence and machine learning, they need to support constantly evolving algorithms, highly specialized applications, you name it. So when you have this fundamental shift from the data center and the architecture that's already in place, you have this intelligent edge, which is a new market.
So what we're seeing is the intelligence moving closer to the actual application rather than sitting in the cloud. So does that mean that customers have very specific requirements for products, used on the edge? Presumably you're bringing a lot of processing power, so there's things you need to do to actually be able to cope with all that power.
Absolutely. Three key things to remember about challenges that designers face is power efficiency, security, and then it has to be reliable. So having exceptional reliability is another key consideration. But then we have identified 5 challenges that fall under those 3 categories that the intelligent edge specifically face. And that is thermal and space constraints. So, when you're moving things away from brick and mortar of a data center and you're putting into people's homes, their cars, you name it, in their hands, as far as, mobile-based devices, thermal constraints is a big issue that needs to be resolved. Minimal power budgets, because now some of these items, they don't have an unlimited power budget. They might even be on a battery. So being able to manage power efficiency through both thermal and limited power budgets is really important. Safety and security. So you have no cybersecurity if you don't already have physical security in place. Making sure that these applications and items are both safe and secure is also very important. Supporting real-time and flexible compute needs. So that could be operating systems, it could be different compute models and architectures. And then, of course, tying back into reliability is you don't want these things to fail. You don't want the radiation that we experience every day to cause a bit flip. And so zero configuration errors is also very, very important challenge that needs to be addressed.
So there's quite a lot of demands for these products. You need the performance, but also you need low power, et cetera, et cetera. You talk a lot about PolarFire for this market. So,
Yes.
I'm interested to know a little bit about PolarFire and how you've optimized it for the intelligent edge.
So PolarFire is actually 5 years old, maybe even 6 years old now. We built it from the ground up, and we optimized the architecture, at that time for edge applications. So it's a 28 nanometer CMOS process, and we've licensed technology from Sonos. That's what gives it that non-volatility. And, we've then built power optimized, area optimized architecture within the device to make these really tiny packages and to address the things that I just mentioned, about thermal constraints and power budgets. PolarFire is really optimized for that edge market. that includes a SoC version of the PolarFire family. So we have both an FPGA and an SoC.
And that's quite interesting because, I used to design with FPGAs a long time ago, and the world's changed completely. I mean, you can have processors on board, all sorts of functionality. And clearly, that's something you've done with a PolarFire to, again, optimize it for these applications.
Absolutely.
So I'm interested to know, in terms of the FPGA market, how big is it? I mean, there's been a lot of change in the market with companies being acquired and things. So how big is the market itself?
There has been a lot of acquisition. The market itself is about $7.5 billion globally. So it's huge. The FPGA and SoC market is quite large. I do believe that it's growing maybe about 10% a year, but don't take my word for it. It is hard to guesstimate these types of numbers, but 7.5 billion, maybe about a 10% growth rate year on year.
And in terms of that, I mean, how well is PolarFire doing in that market? Is that growing at a similar rate?
No, we're beating the market and we're beating our competitors. In fact, as a division, we do not, or as a company, I should say, not just a division, but as a company, Microchip does not break out revenue for FPGAs specifically. However, our business unit has seen 32% growth year on year. So we're growing like gangbusters, and it's a really exciting time for us and for Microchip.
And that's really exciting because obviously you're growing much faster in the market. You're taking share from other people. So you
Mhm.
must be doing something right there.
We are. And as I mentioned, PolarFire has grown 48% year on year. And even though this product has already been in the market for 5 years, we're still seeing exponential growth and demand, for PolarFire in new designs, specifically along the intelligent edge.
That's fantastic. And I love the intelligent edge. It's such an interesting market, but I'm a bit of a geek as well. And we talked about, FPGAs being used everywhere. One of the areas you've got a really strong reputation is in space. So can you
Mhm.
tell me a bit more about that and what makes Microchip FPGAs so suitable for that market?
Sure. The heritage products that we support are for the space market. We are number one in aerospace and defense, Microchip as a company, but also, our business unit. Although I'm on the terrestrial side, I can tell you that it is our power, reliability, and security story that puts us in that position. We have worked with these customers, these large aviation clients, as an example. Think about every time you go on a commercial flight, you're flying with at least 30 pieces of microchip along with you.
So, and again, I guess this is, trying to look at some of the cooler technologies. I mean, AI is another big area.
Mhm.
Do you see AI being deployed with PolarFire, and how's that being done?
Absolutely. AI is exciting and it's everywhere from the depths of space. Think about Mars rover, think about satellites, even low Earth orbiting, satellites. And that continuum spans all the way to your home. There's sensors in your home, whether it be, your refrigerator is smart now, or you have smart homes and everything in between. So literally AI is everywhere. And PolarFire specifically has enjoyed strong adoption in embedded vision applications. So embedded vision and using cameras or visual input to make decisions is only going to continue to grow. Everything from industrial lines to the new prosumer cameras to medical diagnostics. I mean, we've come so far in medical diagnostics. It's crazy. Also, I can't not give a nod over to aerospace and defense. And I don't want to forget about automotive. Cars now have dozens of cameras, and sensors on a car. So, literally AI and using that embedded vision to your advantage and to make decisions on behalf of yourself or the car or the milk in your fridge. It's really everywhere.
That's awesome. And I've seen you've actually got development kits specifically designed to help people do vision AI projects. So
Mhm.
it's actually something, presumably, that's relatively easy to do with PolarFire compared to other products.
Well, AI is not easy. Let's be real. AI is challenging. You have to think of AI needs to have multiple frameworks that they support. in order to take advantage of what PolarFire offers as a low power inferencing platform. So that's when the frameworks are decided and the algorithms are running, you then are leveraging our technology to inference, to make that visual input based decision. It's not easy. So deep learning frameworks and neural networks, they need to be converted to RTL code. And a computer scientist might lack the expertise that's required to do that transition into RTL code. There's a multitude of frameworks that are being used and developed and released, consistently. There's a learning curve for new developers. FPGAs, although taught in most engineering, classes at the university level, it's not the number one picked career choice after. But I wish it was. But there's just a learning curve for new developers. And so when you have all these things and then you have this challenge, right? So you have somebody that might not have the experience. You have very large construct of data and information, and you want to invest in hardware. How do you validate your neural network is even going to work in the hardware? So we have developed a tool called vector blocks, and vector blocks can address those challenges and make it easier, not easy, but make it easier for developers and designers who want to take advantage of that to take those networks and convert it into RTL code and validate it before they make heavy investments in hardware. So it's a really exciting area for us.
And that's fascinating. I think, one of the things that changed, I mentioned a long time ago, I did FPGA development. One of the things that really has changed is the tools. And there's so much more functionality and so much more capability to make sure the design works first time. We talked a little bit about SoCs. I'd like to go back to that. I mean, there's so many functions that you can put on SoC. So what are the key functions you're adding to the Microchip SoCs?
So PolarFire SoC is, our key product now. We do have prior generations of product that have ARM processors in there. But where I'd like to, spend a little time is on PolarFire SoC. And the reason why is we're leading the market with a quad-core 64-bit RISC-V based processing architecture. And this is a big deal because, RISC-V is growing exponentially. It's going like gangbusters. You might not see as many commercial-based products for it, but lots of large companies are deploying it in their frameworks and in their systems consistently. So us investing early in RISC-V allowed us to have this lead in providing a commercial programmable open source compute-based architecture. PolarFire SoC itself supports things like asymmetric multiprocessing with, double the power efficiency. So again, back to the same message, our products are highly power efficient. As part of some of the architecture decisions, we also added a flexible and configurable 2 megabyte L2 cache. So you can use that to loosely or tightly configure it with your, processing architecture. We support Linux and we support real-time operating systems. So there's just a lot of opportunity to customize what you want to do and support multiple different types of processing architectures. So PolarFire SoC is a really cool product. And, we're seeing opportunities for PolarFire SoC literally everywhere. And we're seeing opportunities where there might have been, a CPU or an MPU external and, the client was using the FPGA to support infrastructure or hardware acceleration. And they're now able to consume that other device within a single chip from us. So we like that.
That's awesome. And I think, you maybe were a little coy there because from what I understand, Microchip was actually the very first to introduce a RISC-V core onto an FPGA. So you've not been working with it for a long time, but longer than anybody else.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it just deserves a shout out. Ted Spears is on the board for RISC-V, and they look at him like the godfather of RISC-V in some ways when it comes to, his involvement very early on with the others from UC Berkeley that started the ISA itself.
That's awesome. I mean, I've loved talking about the FPGAs themselves, but let's look at, a little bit wider. I mean, how do you see your business impacting Microchip overall? Where does it fit into the company?
I love what our business unit brings to Microchip. And what it does specifically from my perspective is it extends Microchip's leadership in compute, but it extends the continuum of compute that they can now offer. So think about, they've been known for 8 and 16 and 32-bit, microprocessors and controllers. Now we have 64-bit SoCs, and the opportunities to go and engage with clients that are developing with FPGAs and SoCs it's a wide open greenfield. And we're really seeing that with the engagement from our own field, engagement with clients who say, gosh, I didn't even know Microchip had FPGAs. And so it's one of the reasons you and I are talking is to kind of get the word out that Microchip is FPGAs and SoCs. And we are really extending that compute continuum. So it's an exciting time to be part of Microchip and really to be part of this BU.
And Diane, I love your excitement about the products as well. I think that's great to have someone who's so enthusiastic about the products. One of the things I personally think, makes people enthusiastic about the products is really cool applications. So, I mean, maybe you could share with the listeners a couple of the applications that you think are particularly interesting.
So I'll tell you one for me that is really near and dear to my heart. And I am a very fortunate person. I'm fortunate to have a job. I'm fortunate to work for this great company, Microchip, but there are so many others out there that are less fortunate. So when you think about the continuum of healthcare and health provided services that are available to folks in maybe third world or less developed nations and regions, we have several customers that are developing new ultrasound. And what this brings really to these, low income, less developed nation is the democratization of healthcare. It makes it accessible for everyone. And so now we have these ultrasound wands that are handheld. You can connect it to your iPhone, and out in the Serengeti or out in the fields or wherever the people may be that need this type of diagnostic equipment, we've made it low cost. And, we've made it so that anyone can have access to it. And so for me, I think that's a really impactful application and design that, we have been involved with. And it's just really exciting to think about portable ultrasound in that way. Other interesting applications, like I think there's so much going on with, industrial. I mean, we've seen applications where we now have cameras that are counting the sesame seeds on a hamburger bun. So you want to make sure you have 64 seeds for, every hamburger bun. So things like that are feeding people, that are providing healthcare options and enhanced diagnostics for people that wouldn't normally have them. And speaking of feeding people, agriculture. Agriculture is another one that is just booming. And these very large tractors are going out and deploying artificial intelligence to know when is that food ripe, ready to pick? Does it need a little spritz of extra water? Does it get too much water? Is there some type of pest or, a weed that needs to get plucked? Like being able just to bring this type of technology to the market is cool. So it's hard to pick one, but those are a couple.
That's certainly an interesting range of applications, I have to say, Diane. And I particularly love the ultrasound,
Mhm.
not just because it's doing some real good in the world, but also it's great when companies actually care about bringing products to a much wider audience rather than their high-end sort of flagship products. So it's great to see that you're enabling technologies to be rolled out where previously people couldn't afford it. I think that's awesome.
It's awesome. And Microchip Cares, Microchip Cares is such a great organization to be a part of. And all the things that they do for their clients and their employees and just the world as far as how they're addressing sustainability and green technology. It's a really cool place to be.
That's amazing. And presumably when you're doing that, you're not just doing that on your own with the FPGAs, but you're working with some of the other Microchip business units?
Of course, of course. So an FPGA or an SoC, you can think of it like a blank canvas or even, a Swiss Army knife, but on its own, it's still a blank canvas. So you need to connect to other things. And so we work a lot with our other business units. Think about like CoExpress as an example. We have these really high speed CoExpress PHYs, and we've now created the capability to run 40 meters worth of cable delivering power and video using a CoExpress, product. Analog and power. We're working with, the different business units in analog and power to make sure that we have optimized solutions that take advantage of the infrastructure within PolarFire to make it simple. less translation. There's a PMIC being built that's, built just for PolarFire. So, having a customer come to Microchip and buy one thing isn't what we want them to do. We want our customers, and they know that we have this really broad portfolio. So as a business unit, when clients are designing, they're making these decisions to use an FPGA or an SSE very early in the design process. So when you're working so deeply in partnership with your clients and you have all these other amazing products, you want to make sure that, they've been vetted and tested. And so that's what we spend a lot of time working with our other business units to make sure that we're partnered together for the best possible outcome for the client.
That's awesome. If someone's new to FPGAs and they're looking for a way to get started, maybe they're a Microchip customer of other products, or maybe they're just not a Microchip customer yet.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the easiest way to actually start with Microchip FPGAs?
Couple ways. First of all, talking to, potential university students out there, we recently launched a discovery kit. So our discovery kit is targeted towards several pilot university programs, but we're making it available for everyone. And this is a low cost, full featured PolarFire SoC based kit that you can do a ton with. So that's one way. We also partnered with beagleboard.org. So, the maker community is very familiar with beagleboard.org. And the BeagleBone 5, is it BeagleBone or BeagleFire? I think it's BeagleFire. Sorry if I got that wrong. But they created a very low-cost board, and they're building applications. And they have a huge client base and ecosystem around BeagleBoard and various capes to make things really easy, and makers and hobbyists and people who just want to mess around with the technology. We have those two options. We also offer a lot of training classes. So we have training classes online. We have a large suite of YouTube content and playlists on the Microchip YouTube site. So that would be another place to go and talk to anyone that is connected with Microchip. So if you're a client watching this and you have a salesperson, or if you don't, give us a call. We have folks that would love to talk to you and kind of help you get through the hurdle, or recommend a tool or a board as a place to get started, for sure.
That's awesome. So many ways to get started. I also feel we probably should talk about the development tool software as well, but that's probably another podcast, I guess.
True. We are not just FPGAs. We have a unified design flow that comes along with it. And that unified design flow covers domain solutions, operating systems, tools, intellectual property, hardware and silicon. Tools could be its own podcast, Mike, for sure.
Diane, thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing. It feels like we've covered so much. I guess to sum up, is there one thing you'd like people listening to really remember about Microchip FPGAs?
Yeah. We're the low power leader, and we have been for some time. And we're going to continue to lean into power efficiency to make sure that we have the best solutions available. And we have an exciting roadmap coming your way.
You've been an amazing guest, Dan. I've really enjoyed this.
Thanks.
I mean, if anybody would like to get in contact with you and maybe find out a bit more, what's the best way to reach you?
What do you want, my phone number? Well, obviously I'm on LinkedIn. I am part of the Microchip marketing team for FPGAs. So we have an alias for that. If you want to reach out to me directly, it's first name, last name, Diane.Tosetti at microchip.com, or ping me on LinkedIn. Or if you have more of a general question, we do have a marketing alias that's FPGA_marketing at Microchip. So lots of ways to find me.
That's awesome. Diane, thank you so much for your time and all your great insights. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the products.
Thanks for listening to the Microchip Is podcast. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform to keep learning about the many technologies, products, and people that make Microchip what it is today. Look out for our upcoming Microchip Is podcasts and our new Beyond the Microchip podcast series.